Now we can get into our session, and before we begin proceedings, let me acknowledge that we're on the lands of the Ngunnawal people, pay my respects to elders past and present, acknowledging that this unceded land and their caring for country is integral to our survival as humanity. So, in 1963, while Donald was writing The Lucky Country, I happened to be part of the live audience in the ABC Gore Hill Studios for a program, a very popular program at the time, called Thursday Partyland. The key people being Miss Pat and Mr. Squiggle. So some of you may get the resonance from a previous session. I happened to be called in from the audience with a few of the other audience members to participate in a game. And I won the game. So Mr. Squiggle invited me to reach into the magic well to receive my magic gift. And so I went over and reached into the well, and there was this poor cadet floor manager who'd had to sit in this cardboard cylinder for two hours while the filming was on, who passed me up my present. And I like to, you know how with memory you reconstruct a coherence to the chaos of existence. So I reconstruct that as my Weberian moment of disenchantment. And the beginnings of a trajectory towards engaging in scholarship and the search for deeper meaning and truth. And I think one of the interesting themes throughout this is, you know, the kind of sense of an analysis of an exhaustion of a socio-political, economic and cultural moment, a hinge moment, but what is there to come, and the difficulty of imagining and thinking through the current dilemmas that we face and the current disparities in political and cultural fracturing of our polities, what is to come, and the role of the humanities, I think, in helping our culture to think through what the future might hold. So I think the importance of this session is about futures. What are we looking forward to? What can we imagine? What are the challenges ahead? And we have 4 interesting speakers for this session. We have Liz Allen, who's a senior lecturer at the ANU Centre for Social Policy Research. She's on the ANU Council and an advocate for inclusive and accessible higher education. Absolutely endorse all that. She's a very influential thinker and writer. Her book, The Future of Us, is a call to action to build a stronger Australia through fairness and equality. We've got Brian Schmidt, who some of you will know as the recent former Vice-Chancellor of this fine university, and I had the pleasure of working with Brian from time to time on G08 events, and he's a great colleague, Nobel Prize winner. His CV is so long and the bio so long, we would be into the future for a long way. So I'll just acknowledge Brian there as a great contributor to everything. Libby Robin, again, one of our finest environmental historians, really one of the great pioneers in the field, written a number of very influential books, and great to have Libby here. And we have also a taped speech from June Oscar, who's a proud Bunabur woman from the remote town of Fitzroy Crossing in Western Australia's Kimberley region. I know Fitzroy Crossing quite well because my sister worked there for a couple of years in Indigenous sexual health. So it'll be great to hear from June. And Bannock Rind is here. She's going to answer any of the questions. So very great to have Bannock here, a proud Badima Yamachi woman from the mid-west of Western Australia, and currently the co-lead for Impact and Engagement in the Tangani Institute for First Nations Gender Justice. So great to have you here. So with further ado, I hand over to Liz to lead us through.
Hello, I'm Liz Allen. I won't bore you with the bio, it's already been done. I'm a demographer and I come to you with this, I guess, somewhat controversial idea that we're still in a mess. It's a different mess and we need to work our way out of it. I'd like to acknowledge that we are sitting here today on unceded lands. Okay. From my point of view, Australia is at a tipping point. We are at a crossroads of social progress. The nation is confronted by multiple crises that together undermine the nation's stability. So that looks like a crisis of many things that come essentially from four broad policy domains. Housing affordability. You wouldn't be surprised to know that generation on generation in this country since the post-World War II era have had declining home ownership rates. We're at a point now where class is divided along the lines of home ownership. Economic security is at the forefront of young people, and when I say young people and their minds, I'm talking about people under the age of 50. This idea that our youth is protracted further and further into this idea of where we can financially be stable is of great concern. Gender inequality by way of workplace interactions, by way of assumptions around who has or who cares for children, whether or not we have the ability to access safe reproductive health and so on, are becoming an issue even more. Climate boiling, just like economic security, just like housing affordability and gender issues, are at the forefront of young people's minds. Remember, 50 and under. So we've got to this point now where we have all of these crises coming together, confounding cluster of crises that undermine our future. In amongst that and underneath, running unspoken, is that Australia has not reckoned with the ghosts of the past. We actually don't know who we are as a nation. We've not reckoned with that notion of the fact that we have a black history, a strong black history. And unless you are a particular kind of multicultural person, you are absent in the nation's notion of ethnicity. We actually don't ask what people's ethnicity is in Australia. Why? Because the fear that people will simply say Australian. We actually don't know, and we've not grappled with what it means to be Australian. If you've read The Lucky Country, you know that we've been here before. We've been here before throughout Australian history. We can look at the demographic issues of those four main issues: housing, economic security, gender, and of course climate. The difference is that this time around, what used to be set to the fringes, poverty, folk doing it tough, it used to be a small minority experiencing that tough times. It's gone mainstream. This, to me, is what sets us apart, the now from the past, and why it's ever more important to tackle these issues. Social cohesion is fraying as a result of that insecurity, that feeling of fear about tomorrow. This image of a kind of pastel-coloured Australia, a land of opportunity, a land of tomorrow, was what was used to promote and bring to the attention displaced people's minds to coming to Australia in the post-World War II era. That idea of a home with a yard and the laughing horse and the happiness all round is an image long lost. Hope is lost and insecurity reigns. And this is my greatest concern, that notion of a fraying social cohesion. Because with that comes a whole range of issues around stability, the erosion of democracy, but more importantly, our perception is more powerful than reality. If there is a feeling of uncertainty, there is a feeling of insecurity, a perception that there is no hope for the future, then that's exactly what there will be. The perception issue is one we can tackle free of charge. The only thing that limits us is innovation, or lack of. Broad change is needed. We know that Australians don't tend to enjoy voting for reform, so call it something else. So if we think now about the future and what comes next, we're a growing population. Our growth is slowing, yes. We need to turn our minds to growing to a fairer country. How do we do that? This is how we do it. We acknowledge that inequality exists. Many can't even do that now. Class intersects, and we don't tend to think about disadvantage and economic inequalities and so on, because we'll hear the economists say things like, guess what? We're doing way better than we were 30, 40 years ago. That's great when you're at the top, white man. And it really hurts those that sit in disadvantage that was once the minority is now going mainstream. We're finally listening. Acknowledge it. Learn from deviants like me, those born into disadvantage that have lived through homelessness, through deep poverty and insecurity, and have come kind of out the other end. Don't deny our existence. Learn with us, from us. Education starts before birth, and childcare is education. Health is cumulative capital. If you are born into a low socioeconomic circumstance, that is your lot in life, and the inequality gets bigger as your life progresses. Secure housing is a right, not a privilege. I'm a forever renter. I will gift that to my 7 children. Not through choice, and not through lack of working bloody hard. Stop tax incentives for the rich. Do I need to say it? Clearly, yes. Increase welfare and income supports. It's a simple no-brainer. Fund it like you mean it, and bloody do it now. Do it yesterday. If you think something is important, just like Beyonce says, put a ring on it, throw cash at it. Spend it and fund it like you mean it, otherwise your words are meaningless. Focus on equity and access. Check your privilege and accommodate those in need. I'm in an incredibly privileged position. You actually listened to me. Years ago, that wasn't the case. We tend to look away from homelessness. We look away from poverty and hunger. You can't keep looking away. It's going mainstream. Leadership is how we get out of this mess. There are some budget-neutral things that can be done, changing the way that we speak about these crises. That means that we can change a lot of these perception-based fears that some are real, let's be serious, but others, perhaps the level of insecurity is not. We need to have social commentary putting back that hope in humanity and hope for the future. So my lasting words to you, be bold, be brave, and innovate out of this mess. Our future depends on it. Our young people, 50 and under, need it. We need housing security. We need a certainty of tomorrow that tomorrow will come and it will be worth living.
All right, we'll bring up my first slide, hopefully, maybe. Anyway, as I start, it's great to be part of this conversation. I recognize very much that I am an astrophysicist in a very different universe than I normally am. And so I am definitely well, have a different way of thinking. So thank you very much for acknowledgement. We are here in Cambrai, a place that Ngunnawal Ngambri people have stewarded for generations, and I pay my respects to their elders past and present. So when we reflect back on the last 60 years, we have actually had a very easy, indeed lucky time, but we can expect changes. Global sustainability and climate change has been mentioned as putting downward pressures on our quality of life, especially in emerging countries around us. Australia and our allies no longer are the largest economies in our region, and our influence could diminish quickly depending on what happens. There is a reshaping of global order due to China's emergence, other emerging economies' emergence, but also the behavior of the US, the UK, and ourselves. There is a genuine risk of conflict that directly threatens Australia over the next 60 years, and a genuine risk of mass migration that affects Australia that I don't think we would have thought too much about in 1964. Climate change is coming. Here is a map. What would be seen 10 years ago as pessimistic, this is where we're going right now, about 3.5 degrees Celsius change here in Canberra, and that is an Australian model. The US-led world order is changing. And I think we all know that. We saw it in the election last week, and it will affect us in ways that it's hard to really know, but it will change the world order as we know it. And then we haven't talked too much about this, but automation, often referred to as AI, but it's much bigger than just AI, is coming, and one way or another, it is going to disrupt. This set of figures chart the capability in things like reading comprehension, image recognition, language understanding of AI capabilities relative to an average human's performance. And I never thought possible, but a computer can outperform me on image recognition now, and everyone here in this room. And that is coming up on more and more things. And it's not that we will be replaced, but we are going to have to change to be able to harness the power of machines, or they will replace us. And there is a way forward, but it is a change. Australia is making some decisions. Our economic complexity is decreasing from already third world places, such that we are truly a banana republic when it comes to how we look at producing things. There's no other country like us in the world. And just to remind you, this is what we do right now in our economy, and those are the things we dig out of the ground. So it is very, very concentrated in a small number of things. We are making decisions not to invest in research and development. This is what our R&D across all sectors of the economy has done. This is investment in the future, and we are decreasing faster than any country on the planet, and it's going to be a lot worse when the numbers come out in 2 years based on decisions this year. There's also some other things I think people forget about. How we invest in our education. So our system, K through 12 here, is one of the most segregated based on social, cultural, any sort of set of attributes you want in the world. This is where we are, and there is no advanced economy anywhere near us in this diagram. Our schools are incredibly segregated. And that is something that thus far has not caused that many problems for most of us, but I think in what Liz was just talking about is one of the reasons why we do have problems we have. And these are getting worse because our concentration of, for example, disadvantage, one of the ways of segmentation, is the fastest rising in the OECD. Completely not talked about in this country. So let's just look a little bit about our strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. This is not meant to be absolutely across everything, but we have some great strengths. We have the most efficient production of key commodities in the world, whether it be agriculture or mines or all those types of things. We are a standout. We currently have a very high median standard of living, overall wellness, life expectancy, education, pretty much any way you measure it. We have a relatively cohesive multicultural society. Not great, but from the world point of view, it's not bad. And we have some great attributes that, just thank for where we are. There's huge landmass, and we are physically separated from other countries. That is, we do not have a border to deal with like other places do. But our economy is small, it's not diverse. We do have income inequality widening, and there are areas of extreme disadvantage. We have declining educational outcomes. And that strength of being not having a border also means we're geographically isolated from the rest of the world and most of our allies. And we have built an economy that is very successful, but it's highly dependent on trade, and we have very little capability ourselves without trading globally. There are many opportunities. We're almost certainly going to have the cheapest energy in the world for the foreseeable future, and we can use it ourselves, and we're exported. The digital world is allowing us to lower our barriers so that the geographic isolation is not nearly a problem that it used to be. We have a very large underutilized land and sea geographic area, and one could imagine using immigration to boost our GDP given our multicultural strengths, or not if we're worried about it being a weakness. Threats. Well, we're going into uncharted territory with respect to the global world, and a destabilized global world undermines our economy's strengths. We are more susceptible to global warming downsides than almost any other country. We are very vulnerable to geopolitical threats without an effective U.S. backstop that we put all of our effort into. And there is potentially a very large nearby population of economic or political refugees if things get messy over the coming 60 years. So I want to talk about some of the things we can do that kind of make sense no matter what we do, but there's 60 actions, and so they're not going to feature in the election campaign this year or the next or any other one as near as I can tell. There is no road forward where Australia does not benefit from investing in education. And as Liz said, start young, include everyone. You have to build in social cohesion, decrease segregation. And you have to, I think, because of automation, have a system that supports lifelong learning through TAFE universities for every citizen every year of their life. We have to invest in research. That is investing in the future. And that R&D ecosystem requires patience and stability. It's going to deliver over 20 years, not a 3-year election cycle. And I just reflect that I've had 14 science ministers since I won the Nobel Prize 13 years ago. And 2 of those have been in for 6 years. So we are the lucky country. We're going to have the cheapest energy on the planet, and Ross Garnaut, referred to here several times, has emphasized this is a huge opportunity. And so there is a very straightforward 60-year action. Invest in the energy of the future. The world needs us to do it, and it is a way to be the lucky country again. And a moonshot on cheap energy use where we spend lots of money, which simultaneously can lift our own resilience, but also provide great jobs going forward for lots of Australians, is all over the country, seems to me like an absolute no-brainer. We need, and Liz, I figured you would have said this, we have to have a population policy, whether big or small. We need to understand our demography, plan immigration, and invest in the infrastructure, the health and education, social cohesion actively while and before it's needed, not as a, oh, geez, I guess we better do something now 10 years later. And there is something that will not go away until we deal with it, which is reconciliation. And the First Nations people of this country have told us very much what they want, and I cannot see not listening to them. Now, I'm going to be provocative here. There's a question of whether or not our confidence. Do we want a small Australia? And you might say we want a small Australia because the resources then, we're not spreading it against a bunch of other people. Immigration can break down social cohesion. The future of work and automation means unemployment could be an issue, so maybe let's try to minimize the pressure on that. And we're such a small part of the globe, we're going to do our part, but let's just let everyone else do their own. And our long-term security comes with our alliance to the USA, so we're not going to worry too much about being a smaller part. But I want you to think about a larger Australia, which most people do not talk much about. A larger economy is more resilient, it has more scale, it boosts productivity, and can be more conducive to being complex and self-sufficient. It gives us more defense muscle and global impact that can help us take what we are proud about ourselves and positively influence and shape the world and our region in a time when we may not be able to have just a U.S. backstop. Our land mass and resources can support a much larger population, and ethically, if you believe we live on a planet, given global constraints, one would say we should be doing more with what we have rather than just Fortress Australia. But we do have to believe in ourselves and manage the complexities of having a large immigration population. And that is something that I find Australians probably don't have the confidence in right now. So the two paths equate to two states of mind. A small Australia policy decreases internal threats and increases external threats, whereas the large Australia policy is the inverse. Small Australia gives us the most business as usual, provided the external world does not change. And large Australia requires us to change, to improve, to innovate, but gives us more resilience longer term. So whatever, we do need a good, stable government and a widely shared vision for Australia amongst the population and our politicians is absolutely requisite. We've been talking about that here. Elections are always going to be about short-term issues, but there needs to be multi-partisan support for long-term aspirations. And the way to reach that long-term vision should be contested in elections. And I just advise that elections without any long-term vision set the country backwards, not forward, and that's what I'm worried about. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Libby Robin. I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of Gabor, the place where I live and work, the Woiwurrung, Djadjurrung, and Dalgarang peoples, and also the owners of the land we meet today, the Ngambri and Ngunnawal peoples. I particularly pay my respects to the many I particularly pay my respects to the many traditional custodians of Gondwana Link across the southern lands of Western Australia. These people are working to show us ways to care for country that science alone could never conceive of. I will speak today about the work of the Ngangju Conservation Group at Norseman, the Wallaman Custodians of William Ponds, the Yarramup Corporation at Sunnyside, and the Charak Wujari people. Through different carbon-enabled conservation projects, they are adding to the cultural restoration of the weft of ecological projects. I return to the Bidjara wisdom of Marie Meredith, the first speaker on the first panel yesterday, who spoke of country as agenda setting. We've talked a lot about lucky, I'm talking about country. Country grounds community experience as expertise for expanding intellectual worlds to include us all. Indigenous lands were never ceded. They always were and always will be Aboriginal lands. I want to thank all the elders, past and present, who take the time to teach us all about old and new ways to live here. on country. Now we're today talking about imagining the future. And the world, of course, is changing all around us. By 2084, there'll be many more of the disasters we already know. Fires, floods, heat waves. All these will be worse in 60 years, even if we stop adding to the problems today. What sort of world will our grandchildren inherit? We can't spend the next 60 years overwhelmed by anxiety and feeling helpless in the face of relentless environmental destruction. What can we do? So in this talk, I'm exploring emerging restoration partnerships that connect ecological and social futures, that give people agency in their local futures, investing in the places where they dwell, even where these places are damaged, ruined, compromised. There must be hope. The future is a significant part of one's sense of place in the world. We can no longer escape in the dark of the night when we can't cope with destruction, as John Steinbeck's Okies did in his novel The Grapes of Wrath. Where would we go? There is no elsewhere. We must stay with the trouble. Gondwana Link is an upbeat story of a very special place. It's an organisation that's rebuilding the original and ecological connectivity over 1,000 kilometres across southern Western Australia, eastward from Margaret River to Kalgoorlie and beyond. East of Kalgoorlie are the Great Western Woodlands, one of the world's biggest temperate forests, but they've only recently acquired a name. Gondwana is also a grand social experiment, joining up the aspirations of the public and private sector for conservation. It works to restore biodiversity health in whole landscapes that have been damaged by poor farming practices, by mining, by rapacious developments. It aims to make them safe for nature, supportive of the social fabric of local communities. Gondwana Link has difficult neighbours. The Western Australian wheat belt, as you can see on the picture, it's to the northwest. It's a cleared area so vast it's visible from space. Tony Hughes-Dayeth, the literary historian of the wheat belt, describes it as like nothing on this earth. Yet, the Gondwana Link lands embrace some of the Earth's rarest plants and other life forms, many of which only live in tiny pockets of the landscape. Indeed, the wheat belt itself still hosts some surprising jewels of biodiversity, despite all the clearing. Ensuring a safe, secure future for many curious life forms in the face of changing climate is a great challenge. It's a task for many partners. The United Nations has awarded a biosphere status to the Fitzgerald River area on the south coast. There are also smaller reserves, the projects of governments and of conservation organisations. And there's a great deal of participation from traditional owners and other local landholders. Keith Bradby is the foundation CEO of Gondwana Link Limited, formed as a loose alliance in 2002 and formally established on the 1st of August 2009. He continues at its helm, building and filling out philosophies he developed in the 1980s as an activist working with colleagues to force a re-examination and eventually a halt to a proposed extension of the wheat belt eastwards through country near Ravensthorpe, where he ran his beekeeping business. He's a leader of people who connects unlikely partners through his own networks with deep roots in place. His presence protects the project from being owned by any of the larger partners. More than 50 organisations have cooperated to help Gondwana Link on the ground. It brings together large official NGOs, the Nature Conservancy, Bush Heritage Australia and others, with small, very local natural history groups. The Friends of the Parongaruck Range, pictured here, for example, has in just 15 years transformed a beaten-up farm into a beautiful wildflower reserve. Bradby has worked closely with Noongar families and with the Nyangju conservation group through Gondwana Link Limited, which has helped them to own and operate their Now and Up property. At Now and Up, they hold cultural camps for Curtin University students and others. The Gondwana Link idea originated with the coming together of 5 big groups: Bush Heritage, Wilderness Society, Friends of Fitzgerald River National Park, Fitzgerald Biosphere Group and Greening Australia. Then in 2002, Nature Conservancy, the world's largest non-government conservation agency, chose Gondwana Link as its first Australian project for support. Initially by funding Bush Heritage to purchase 800 hectares of bushland and 70 hectares of cleared farmland along Cheraninup Creek and other initiatives, creating what is now called the Fitz-Stirling Link, that is linking the Fitzgerald with the Stirling Ranges. The big groups might have kicked off Gondwana Link, but it's the small local groups that keep it going, Bradby says. He's critical of 3-year funding arrangements that cut across long-term outcomes. National priorities change rapidly. Local priorities stay local. Diversity is strength, ecologically and organisationally. So Gondwana Link encourages farmers, conservation activists and traditional owners to find new ways to work together. The important thing is to keep on working together, rather than disappearing off to some other biodiversity hotspot, as governments and bigger conservation organisations tend to do. Social networks and partnerships are at the heart of the work of the humanities, as Bradby commented to a student of environmental humanities who asked how she could help. This is what he said: "We need the humanities people for projects that hit the heart as well as the head. After all, the physical sciences haven't convinced nearly enough people about climate change over the last 40 years. You can do all the studies on the yellow-bellied whatnot that you like, but getting people to find ways to work together is our biggest challenge." He's got a real way with words. Gondwana Link does support science, even studies of yellow-bellied whatnots. It does through its own healthy restoration projects. Scientists come to Gondwana Link, not the other way around, Bradby observes. So we don't get caught up with organising grants for science. Like the mammals and the birds, scientists want to work with us. They want to work with good restoration. Restoration has attracted some 112 published scientific papers already. Gondwana Link also draws on the creative arts, music, dance and museum exhibitions. Traditional owners use all these methods to keep their culture strong. The newly refurbished Western Australian State Museum, Bullabardip, has both environment and Indigenous galleries filled with Gondwana Link stories, objects and small films. Filmmaking is a growing enterprise. There's soon to be an hour-length film of The Stars Descend, Annette Carmichael's project that danced across Gondwana Link from Margaret River to Kalgoorlie last year. So, a future can help the present. The experience of place is rarely acknowledged in handouts about natural resource management. Yet experience is crucial for the future. And finding ways to foster that experience is also good for culture. Funding from big investors like L'Oreal has enabled Chalcherack traditional owners to buy 5,500 hectares of freehold land near Esperance. Here they take charge of revegetation work, tell stories and do cultural work. They also benefit from the sales of carbon credits. So-called natural resource management teams typically arrive with toolkits, ideas from elsewhere, and often a grant to get an outcome, a deliverable in the ghastly parlance. They have a fixed deadline that forces each team to finish and move on. Dwelling on, staying with the trouble, even just bearing witness to a singular place, takes grit and determination. It rarely attracts grants or even dollops of cash. Best practice is about making what's already there work harmoniously. It's not about quick fixes from elsewhere. Pastoral degradation often comes from elsewhere places in the form of introduced fertilisers, weedicides, big digging machines and the cash grants themselves. There is an important role for the humanities in creating pathways for homegrown care as well. Healing most often comes from within. Together, ecological repair and celebration serve to restore torn social fabric and landscapes, ruined by extractive practices. They also build reconciliation in troubled times. Local and global together are crucial to engage people from all traditional custodians they're crucial to engage people from all walks of life in the present and are essential to planetary health in the future. Enabling traditional custodians to become long-term owners and managers of restored ecosystems is one of the most important ways Gondwana Link contributes to Australia's future. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you to the Australian Academy of the Humanities for inviting me to speak today. I extend my apologies for not being able to join you in person, but I'm deeply honoured to be part of this reflection on the future of Australia, particularly as we mark the 60th anniversary of Donald Horne's The Lucky Country. This is a moment for us to consider the journey we're on, to look fiercely, fearlessly at our challenges and to dream of what Australia could be. I would like to start by paying my respects to the traditional owners of the Ngunnawal and Ngambri country, where you are all gathered today. I extend my deepest respects to their elders, past and present, and recognise their enduring connection to their lands, their waterways and communities, and in keeping us all safe as we walk and go about our lives on their country. When I think about the future, I think about peace, not as a passive state of calm, but as something we actively build, something we create with intention, with care and courage. Peace building is the deliberate process of establishing and nurturing the conditions that allows peace to grow. It involves addressing root causes of conflict, fostering social justice, and creating inclusive structures that sustains harmony over time. It is a process that I am absolutely committed to as I look around the world and see the damages wrought by violent conflict and divisions and tensions that seethe unaddressed. Peace in its truest form is a dynamic process. Like a river, it carves its own path, adapting to the terrain, flowing around obstacles, shaping the land as it goes. Peace requires us to be active participants in shaping the society we wish to live in. It asks us to build bridges where walls once stood, to create space where voices were silenced. When we speak of peace building, we must also speak of conflict, because the two are not opposites, they are deeply intertwined. Conflict, when approached with respect, can be a powerful force for growth. It challenges us, makes us confront difficult truths, and opens the door to transformation. But conflict can also be harmful when driven by structural violence, such as poverty, racism, or inequality. It becomes a force that diminishes lives, fractures communities, and perpetuates cycles of suffering. Right now, we are in a time of fracture. We see the polarisation in our communities, aggression in our politics, and despair in our hearts. It feels as if the very foundations of society are shaking beneath our feet. And yet I ask you in this moment to pause, to take a breath, and to reflect on the fact that the future is long. The changes we seek will not come overnight, but they will come if we begin the work now with intention and a commitment to peace building. As we imagine Australia in 2084, I'm reminded of the words of Johann Galton, not a household name, but known as the founder of peace studies after the Second World War. Galton was a visionary who understood that peace could not be separated from our ability to dream. His work has profoundly shaped the field of peace building, and as my team and I at the Wiyaniudangani Institute for First Nations Gender Justice explore pathways to peace, his ideas continue to resonate. It's important to acknowledge his insights as we consider what I'm exploring with you today. Galton often spoke of how the young are the most open to imagining the future, unburdened by the disappointments that life can inevitably bring. He observed that as we grow older, we carry the weight of maintaining stability and security that we often unlearn dreaming. I want us to reclaim our capacity to dream, not only for ourselves, but for generations who will inherit the Australia we are shaping today. In this imagining, we must start with coexistence. Peace is built on coexistence, not just in the absence of difference, but in the respectful embrace of it. To coexist is not to agree on all things, but to hold space for diversity, to recognise the value in our many perspectives, and to honour the stories that shape us. Galton saw the future not merely as an academic exercise, but as a canvas for collective imagination. He showed us that peace and the future are interwoven. To strive for peace, we must hold on to the possibility of transformation, the power of envisioning what could be. But peace is not built on dreams alone. It is also forged in the fires of the present, in the conflicts and complexities that shape our daily lives. Today, one of our most pressing conflicts is the struggle for recognition and respect for First Nations peoples. A conflict laid bare in the recent referendum on the voice to Parliament. This moment was about more than a single initiative. It was an invitation to reimagine Australia as a place of shared governance, a place where First Nations voices would not be merely included, but central to decisions that impact their lives and lands. Yet the conversation became clouded, twisted by fears and misconceptions. The opposition to the voice framed it as an unfair advantage for First Nations peoples, a perspective that missed the essence of coexistence. Coexistence does not mean the erosion of anyone's rights. It means building a society where all rights, all identities, and all histories are recognised as part of our shared narrative. This missed opportunity reminds us how far we still have to go in understanding the true value of diversity, in recognising that we all stand to gain when we bring our full selves, our histories, our cultures, our aspirations into the public sphere. But even as we grapple with this conflict, we must not lose sight of what is possible. Conflict, as Garton showed us, can become a force for transformation if we approach it with respect and a desire to learn. It can push us to confront our biases, to dismantle structures of inequality, and to create spaces where all voices can flourish. This, too, is peace building. Finding ways to engage constructively with conflict so that it propels us toward a more just and inclusive society. So let us imagine Australia in 2084, a place that has come to fully embrace coexistence through a serious process of peace building, where First Nations peoples are not on the margins of decision making, but at its very core. In this future, our knowledge systems, our ways of knowing, being and doing are deeply embedded in the fabric of the nation. They guide us, they guide our laws, inform our policies and shape our values. Australia's governance structures reflect the relational and holistic practices that have sustained First Nations communities for tens of thousands of years. By 2084, we envision a nation that operates under a constitution that honours First Nations sovereignty, where the cultural, legal and spiritual frameworks of First Nations peoples are not sidelined but integrated into national identity. Our languages, once endangered, are now flourishing. They are spoken not only in schools but across communities, valued as vital threads in the tapestry of Australian life. Through these languages, we gain new insights into the land, each other, and the responsibilities we share as caretakers of this country. In this future, Economic justice is a reality. First Nations people lead in sectors from environmental stewardship to new and emerging technology, bringing forth sustainable models rooted in circular economies and community-centred development. Our businesses thrive not just within Australia, but on a global stage, driven by principles of reciprocity, respect, and responsibility. Economic inclusion is not a lofty goal, but an everyday reality with equitable access to procurement, investment, and opportunities across sectors. The concept of Indigenous data sovereignty has reshaped how we collect, use, and share information. Data is no longer an extractive practice, but a tool for empowerment, safeguarded by ethical frameworks that prioritises the autonomy and agency of First Nations communities. Australia in 2084 leads the world in its approach to human rights, justice, and sovereignty, setting a standard for how nations can truly coexist with their First Peoples, honouring their cultures as integral to national and global identity. But peace and prosperity do not exist in isolation. We are part of a larger region, connected to the lands and cultures around us. In 2084, Australia holds a unique position in the world, recognised as a leader in climate action and human rights. We act as a steward of the Pacific, forging partnerships that support the resilience of our neighbours, especially in the face of climate change. Our regional leadership is rooted in respect for Indigenous knowledge and a commitment to environmental sustainability, a vision that aligns with the principles of peace building we hold dear. Beyond our stories and beyond our shores, the knowledge and practices of Indigenous peoples are acknowledged and celebrated globally. And the wisdom of Indigenous women flows freely across continents, strengthening our collective capacity to face global challenges. In this vision for 2084, we must recognise the invaluable role of First Nations women. For millennia, First Nations women have been custodians of culture, knowledge, and community. They are the keepers of stories and songlines, the architects of resilience, and the guides through the times of hardships and change. They have held the fabric of their communities together through waves of colonisation, discrimination, and systemic oppression, carrying forward the principles of care, respect, and relationality that will define Australia's future. This future vision is not idealistic. It is grounded in the collective voices of First Nations women who came together through the Wiyaniyu Dangani project. You can read it across the many Wiyaniyu Dangani reports and papers that hold our women's voices. It is a serious, self-determined vision for who we can all become. Through our women's voices, we are reminded that true sustainability begins with respect for our country, for our culture, and for one another. A powerful foundation upon which our future is built. Let us hold this vision with gratitude and commitment, knowing that the future we seek will be richer, more resilient, and more whole because of the leadership of First Nations women. In honouring them, we honour the pathways to a peaceful, flourishing, and inclusive Australia. At the Wiyaniyu Dangani Institute, we are developing a peace-building framework that will guide us on this journey toward coexistence. In this framework, peace-building will be woven into how we work with communities, grow evidence, unite Indigenous and non-Indigenous peoples, and influence policy and institutional reform. It reminds us that peace is not a final destination, but an ongoing commitment, one that requires us to stay open to learning, growing, and adapting as we move forward. For those who still hold the capacity to dream, who refuse to unlearn dreaming, as Garton wrote, the future is wide open. This is our invitation to shape an Australia that reflects our highest ideals, a country that is just, inclusive, and dedicated to the flourishing of all its peoples. In doing so, we honour not only the past and the present, but also the generations yet to come. Yaninja, and thank you.